mystery and horror, the air itself is filled with monsters.
Children of the night, what music they make. He's alive! He's alive!
Hi everyone and welcome to the Monsters Up North podcast. It's a monster podcast and it's hosted by myself and also Dan from Bleading Marvelous. Say hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
We are this week joined by my brilliant buddy and awesome friend, Jake.
Kaiju King himself. That's my best roar.
What, rawr?
Yeah, it's real scary, isn't it?
I was very scared. And today's episode, so episode number 2, is all about the king himself. And no, I'm not talking about Elvis Presley.
Oh, God.
I'm talking about Godzilla.
Oh, that gorilla who masquerades as a king sometimes.
Jake, that is one of my factoids. My God.
But yes, Godzilla, king of the monsters.
King of the monsters. So I'm going to do this week because nobody in the chat pointed out last week. I totally forgot about it last week. I didn't do the disclaimer. And I made a point on the Game of Thrones podcast. I would say this every time that I could because I highly believe in this message that I created myself.
It was first cast jitters. It's okay.
It was. I feel like that intro went a hell of a lot better than last week. And thank you to everyone who tuned in on Monday for the premiere at 6 o'clock on YouTube. It was such a fantastic time. I was bawling my eyes out at the intro because the intro was just amazing.
Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic. I just loved every second of it. So we'll get into it. We'll get into this week's episode once I've said everything discussed in today's episode is our opinions and our opinions alone. If you'd like to discuss anything from today's episode, please come and join us on the Facebook group where we can have an open discussion. What we won't have is anyone coming for us and telling us our opinions are wrong. We can all agree to disagree in fandoms. So let's keep it fun, keep it kind, and keep the toxic behavior out of her nerdism. Thank you. Thank you. So yes, this week is Godzilla, created by let's see if I can do this, Tamayaki Hataki. I could said that earlier on so much better. He debuted in his self-titled film in 1954. He's had 33 Japanese movies, 5 American films, numerous video games, novels, comic book and television shows. We bring you the king of the monsters, Godzilla.
Wow.
Wasn't
This
that
is
such
like
good
you've
info?
like, again, yes, amazing
Thanks.
little speech, but how cool is it that we're hitting like such old monster guys? Because like 1954.
Well, same year as Creature.
Yeah. Decided to just put a monster guy on screen and everyone was just like, this is the greatest thing ever.
That's really true. But very different looking Godzilla. No, very different looking Godzilla to Creature. Oh, honestly,
We got two difference, yeah.
Yeah, can we appreciate the backdrop of these two?
Jake's wins. You've got Godzilla and then you've got Kaiju Jesus in front. So it's like...
Yeah, I'm actually giant. It doesn't come across on camera.
It's the sheer scale. It's the scale of Godzilla behind you, which puts you at about 40 foot, judging going by the... I think he was supposed to be like 120 something feet in his first incarnation. So
is this the Dan facts coming in?
Oh yes, I've done my research.
I love them. I do like how you've gone for the realistic version of like the American movie Godzilla, the chunky Godzilla.
Yeah,
I do like him.
Fat. Oh.
Yeah, it's a good design though, because like
I love it.
Yeah, it's like nice and intimidating.
It's about as intimidating as Godzilla gets to me. That it's a stress ball. It's
I love that.
Why not?
I absolutely love that. My first factoid is the name. Now I can't pronounce it. Is it Gojira?
Gojira.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gojira. So
I was going to say a tip for Japanese is to just not use any like intonation, like just kind of say everything matter of fact in this,
Right.
you don't go like Gojira or anything like
Gojira,
that.
yeah. I quite like that better actually. But his name is it actually rumored to be the nickname of a tough guy from the Toho Studios.
I did hear about that.
And nobody elaborated on said tough guy.
Like what he looked like or anything.
Yeah. So I have these images in my head.
Well, they said his nickname was made up because they said the guy was as big as a gorilla and as big as a whale. So in Japanese translation, a whale is a Kujira and a gorilla. Yeah. So they split it down the middle and made Gojira, making it Godzilla.
They do like a portmanteau in Japanese in like anime and like, the fiction stuff.
Well, that was my first factoid, but I've completely missed my opening bit.
All right.
It's fine.
So we'll just forget that happened. And I'm going to ask you two, what makes Godzilla a great monster?
Go, Jake.
Yeah. For me, first and foremost, it's the size, because like Godzilla's on a scale that don't always hit for like monster movies.
Mm-hmm.
We get like understandably we get a lot of human-sized monsters, like anything like the Predator, the Xenomorph, like the Creature, Frankenstein. He's a little bit bigger, but there was a man in there. And like on like the scale of this was just like it was something I'd never seen before. And like the city destruction element, I think, is like another massive spectacle. I'm trying to think though, like I don't really remember like a first memory of Godzilla specifically, apart from toys maybe. But I'd obviously like seen Power Rangers at quite an early age, which is this exact sort of genre, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I don't know what came first, but like obviously the Green Ranger's Dragon Zord is basically a Godzilla. So it's just always been like a thing that absolutely set my brain on fire as a child. And it's never went away.
Do you have anything, Dan, of what makes him a great monster?
I can only answer from like a personal point of view, but I've always loved dinosaurs. Ever since I was little. And I know technically he's just a mutated something. Depends which film you watch, depends which law you follow. There's about 50 different versions of where he came from and what he is. But it just reminds me of like, I've always been a T-Rex fan. Mm-hmm. And just how ridiculous a T-Rex is in general. It's got a big mouth, huge body, but the world's smallest arms. It just and when you see like Godzilla, there's something about Godzilla to me that just seems so far-fetched and ridiculous, but works. And I think it's also an element of the sort of anti-hero, depending on again which film you watch. But it's very much like, is he the bad guy? Is he the good guy? Depends who he's fighting, depends which director's got it, depends which version. I always like the monsters and the anti-heroes anyway. So
yeah, they do manage to like humanize him in some of the movies where he absolutely is like sympathetic, like when he's being like beaten, whether that means killed or just driven away or frozen or trapped somewhere so he can come back later. But yeah, there's always like the sad music parts where he's like going back to the sea or exploding or something like that.
And then the sad Hulk music came in my head.
Yeah.
And then Godzilla turns around, sheds a tear, waves, and goes back down under the water.
Oh god!
But it's interesting you were bringing up the dinosaur thing, because that was one of the Japanese timeline canon, I guess. Explanations for him. It was that he was a Godzillasaurus or maybe a Gojirasaurus or whatever.
That is a real dinosaur.
Is it a real one now, or
it is now?
Yeah. So like It does look like a T-Rex, but like the story in that one involves time travel and everything because it's nuts that the aliens take him out of the timeline as a dinosaur.
Wow.
Replace him with King Ghidorah, so it changes the whole timeline.
The only one, funnily enough, of all the designs of Godzilla that I didn't like was the most dinosaur one out of them all, which was the Matthew Broderick version of Godzilla. And I hated that design of Godzilla because it was a T-Rex, really.
And it had Velociraptor babies.
Yes.
Because Jurassic Park.
I was watching an old video of somebody reviewing because it was I just had YouTube running, so it was a really old video. It was not the most recent Godzilla, but the one most recent of the, like when he first came back after the 90s movie.
Like legendary pictures.
Yeah. They were reviewing that one and they mentioned the one from the 90s and they showed a picture of it and I went, holy shit, is that what that looked like? Like, wow, like in comparison to like even the one behind Jake, like that is terrible. What I also learned about that whole thing, that the Japanese hated it so badly that they actually killed that version of Godzilla in retaliation to the Americans by saying, fuck no, this is not happening.
It got officially retconned out of the universe effectively because they were like, that's not Godzilla, that's now named Zilla, and it was like a monster that attacked America, and like that's how they basically retconned it completely, which I guess they're allowed to do since they own the character.
Like, how serious are you taking this, that you're having like a full-on death for this character?
Did you ever hear the story about how the guy, I'm terrible with names, but the man in the original Godzilla suit went to see the 1998 movie and he walked out?
I feel like I have heard that story before.
But like, how bad would that guy feel? He's just like, this is disrespecting my legacy.
Don't they know how much effort I put in dressed as a big lizard?
Hold on. So there was an actual person in the suit originally?
Yeah.
All of the Japanese, all the Japanese movies up until the first time it was animated was the 1998 Hollywood version, I think.
Yeah, no, you're right.
He was fully animated,
He didn't
CGI.
He didn't get CGI in Japan till like 2000s, but even then he was still a monster in a suit, but they had some scenes like underwater scenes that were CGI.
All right.
Oh, that's crazy.
It's very,
I didn't know that.
That's an awesome thing for you to find out first time here.
Remember, kids, we are just full of fun factoids.
But it's a lot like the creature you were talking about, where the suit was horrible, like it was super hot and it caught on fire a few times because obviously they set off all those like ground explosions near him. And obviously they chuck him in the water and everything. Like sometimes it's just like a filled suit that they throw around, but other times it's like them tumbling off the side of something into like, because they've got one of those stages that's got about like waist high water all around it, so they can like wade into it and stuff, or like fight in it. So yeah, that must have been an awful job in the 50s as well. Can you imagine? There would have been like no health and safety for him.
We've got no laws.
You can die.
I suppose I think there was a canny big time gap between, because it was like they had an original 2 and then I think there was a 7-year gap. So maybe it crossed into like the 70s. Hopefully the acting laws were better then. Possibly. In Japan, I don't know. Do they have a Screen Actors Guild? Hopefully.
I did find out that in the 1964 Godzilla versus Mothra, the suit did actually set on fire.
They kept it in, I think.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and it's like you can see it now. If you go and watch the film, you'll see the fire, and then the whole suit gets set on fire, and they just keep rolling.
He didn't get hurt, apparently.
That's got to be some thick rubber, though. That I can't imagine that's a thin suit to wear. So it's crazy.
My interesting second factoid is about his roar.
Yes.
And how they created his roar. Now, I wrote this down as it was written, and I don't actually understand it. So it says,
I've got a music degree. We can figure this out.
I've got an A level in music and I still couldn't get it.
Same.
Classic raw is a surprising mix of sounds, rubbing a pine tar coated leather glove over double bass strings. What the fuck is a pine tar coated leather glove?
Well,
I can't picture that.
It's definitely just a one of those thick like workman's leather gloves, but I guess it's coated in
Covered in pines.
Pine
well,
tar.
you know the
Like
they
sap.
had like a pine cone and it has sap on it it's that just hardened that and it.
So it must it must either make it like good for grip, I guess, if that's why they're using it, or the sound like Foley work person was just going nuts with his like bag of tricks. But yeah, supposedly it's just ran down like a big double bass string, like attached to the actual instrument.
That's impressive because I can hear his raw in my head.
Yeah.
And that is kind of impressive.
It used to be lower. Like in the first movie, it does sound a bit more like a musical instrument because it was more of like a low kind of droney type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they did like after like, work on it between films, but it's awesome. It doesn't sound like anything that you would encounter anywhere else.
No,
they used a pitch shifter throughout the films because I watched like a this is my life now. I watched a 6-minute YouTube video of them going through every raw Godzilla had ever had from start to finish. So there was about like 36 movies, I think it said, featuring Godzilla in some way or another, and you can hear it like being pitch shifted all over the place up until about 2014 when they came in with the new Hollywood movie, the legendary one, the one with Bryan Cranston. That's when it first changed for the first time to the one we know now instead of that high pitched noise.
Yeah.
It's like you can still hear it in there though, can't you? Like they've kept the noise.
But apparently it's supposed to be dry ice on a metal vent, crunching rocks, and a wooden crate being dragged across a polished floor.
So that's that's like additional layers on it.
That's one hell of a Foley stage they must have to be able to pull that kind of thing. I mean, if someone said to me,
by the glove.
it's like, could you imagine? So, I mean, to me, it just sounds like, I always think they take a lion and then make that lion sound like a dinosaur somehow, and then that's it. In anything you hear, it's always got like a roar, a guttural roar, and I'm always thinking it's a lion and they've just manipulated it a bit. No, it's a crate being dragged across a floor with some rocks and dry ice.
But how great is it to get to that point though, where you're like, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to drag a crate across the floor.
That sounds like Godzilla.
That is impressive that they've gone that far, as opposed to like using a lion and manipulating that sound, actually physically, practically,
like creating it.
Yes,
from scratch.
What do you think of the design of Godzilla through the years? Do you think he's changed for the better? Obviously, taking the 90s one out of the equation, because that after seeing that picture, like
that's
my
Zilla.
eyes.
It's fine. That's Zilla. He can have his own episode.
Tune in next week for Zilla.
The one you've all been waiting for. I've got a massive soft spot for like the original kind of chunky, long, stiff neck Godzilla. But like I think my absolute favorite would be like, it's kind of like the early 2000s. There was like, they brought him back basically. I think it was literally called like Godzilla 2000. I think the movie was called. That's probably my favorite because he's got like a longer snout, more like dinosaur shaped, and a lot more like spikes, like bigger and more like sharp, jagged spikes. I think I like him the best.
Mine's always got to be the eyes.
Yeah,
it's always the eyes. My other half takes the piss out of me royally because I have a thing for Andy Serkis, and I have done for a long time, and how he does a monkey. I realise how that sounds, but
just go with it.
Why not?
It's the Monster Podcast. It's fine.
Hey, whatever floats your boat these days. There's something out there for everyone. It's all to do with the eyes for me. If you're going to sit and watch a CGI version of something, and they can still make the eyes make you feel something for the monster, then they've done a bloody good job. And I always find, like, I think it's more so, I rewatched the Legendary Pictures, the Bryan Cranston one, the other day, and I didn't realize how much emotion just came out of the eyes. And I was like, oh, I don't remember that happening in like the King of Monsters or Godzilla versus Kong, the newer ones. And I was just like, I remember why I quite liked it. 2014. Yeah, 2014 that one came out.
Oh,
so
was it?
Yeah, it's like a slow build, but I came out of the cinema thinking like, yes, that was good. That was a Godzilla movie. He fought monsters. Because I think like that's sometimes, well, I guess it just the 98 one forgot it, I guess, but it was like, you need something to fight.
I really enjoyed the most recent incarnations of Kong. Now, I admittedly have not seen any of the older stuff, but I appreciate what he means to fans from who have, and I really enjoyed them ones, all because I can forget the story but remember the fights.
Yeah,
that's I'm fine with like the story can be what it is. I want to see some fucking fights.
That's
and
the
I feel
problem.
like I saw that.
Trying to go back to watch old Godzilla movies, there's a lot of a weird story involving aliens a lot of the time and mind control stuff, and like I'm okay, like Shin Godzilla, which was like that was Japan coming back, like, being like, okay, Legendary have had their go, here's Godzilla.
He's
like
the
that,
real one.
That one's a lot of like military logistics, but it's interesting because you're like, oh yeah, what would it be like if you had to like, organize a Godzilla attack? Like, like
leave the planet. You've got no hope. Just
you freeze them with freeze rays or whatever.
They did. They froze him.
He's been frozen lots of times, Sammy. Oh. It's all right.
The thing about the Shin Godzilla one was, though, it was supposed to be like you say, it was like we can do it. Look, we've still got it. But it also harked back to the very first original Godzilla with the military theme.
Yeah.
So they were trying to sort of interweave the origin Japanese version into the more the Hollywood version, so that people would know that it was more than just Matthew Broderick or more than just Bryan Cranston that had been involved in it.
And it was made by like a quite famous anime director who does like Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is also like a kaiju series, technically anime though, but it's he does a lot of like psychological kind of horror, I guess, not like outward horror, but like, talking about horrible things and like the effect it has on the psyche and stuff. So like there's a lot of like introspection in that movie, and there's a really cool part in the middle where he kind of like goes nuclear for the first time, and it's got all this like nice like single choir music, and everyone's just like staring up at like Godzilla like shooting his beam for the first time, and it's kind of like oh crap, like this is like a otherworldly thing, we could never like stop. It's like a really cool arresting moment. Wow. That's probably the highlight of Shin Godzilla. It's worth a look in, but it's hard to find like a subtitled version that's not a dub. That's the unfortunate part.
Which one's the dub? Is that where they're talking over the top of it?
Yeah.
I have to do that. My dyslexic brain cannot keep up with subtitles.
Yeah.
I get so lost so quickly because I'm trying to read one word and the whole sentence come along after it. So I have to watch movies like that. So that's like right up my street.
Yeah. It's good there's both. It's just sad that you don't get a choice. Like you should just be able
to no, I appreciate
when you're on Amazon or whatever.
And hates it. And I think this is half the reason why he doesn't like watching stuff like this with me, because he wants to watch it in sub. He wants to appreciate it for its actual authentic self and like how it was put out to its chosen language. He doesn't want to listen to someone else talking over the top already here,
because the very first Godzilla, like that had like that added an American character like in a voiceover, and he has came back one time, I believe, but it was the actor who played Perry Mason, like the really old Perry Mason.
We need on the case. We need Perry.
So they had him basically like talking over the footage and being like, "Oh my god," he was like a reporter, so he was like, "You're not gonna believe this," like kind of explaining what was on screen, because I guess he was supposed to be like writing a story. So yeah, like they legit had to do that back in the day, because they're like, audiences aren't going to watch subtitles in the cinema. Like, we're just going to have to make it up.
And this leads me to a fact that I found out as well. Now, forgive my pronunciation on this one, because I say it one way, but I know people say it another way, and I don't know which way is the right way. So I'm just going to say it. Goodwill's going to kill me for this. But George Takei, don't know how you say it.
I would say Takei.
I've always said Takei, but apparently it's Takei, so I've been told.
I'm sure Goodwill's screaming at his television while watching this.
Sorry. But he used to dub the Japanese to English versions of some of the earlier Godzillas. But he did mainly, the one that he broke his voice into being quite famous for the dubs in Japanese was Rodan. He did a Rodan movie, he dubbed that. So if you go back and watch that film, you'll hear just George going, "Oh my," over the top of everything. So.
But yeah, like that was in the 7-year gap I was talking about. They kind of did like Rodan and Mothra and got like those things together. So like they were absolutely like making a cinematic universe before that was popular. Although I will say the Universal monsters were the original Avengers as far as movies go.
Yeah.
They did it first.
You heard it here first, guys.
Yeah, like
Jake's making bold statements.
Yeah, like Toho were going nuts with the whole like crossover business, which I think is that's what kind of sparked my attention, because I was like, what, there's all these other monsters with their own movies and now they're all fighting. They're all going to team up to kill King Ghidorah, which is what always happens.
I was an absolute fraud when I went to see, oh God, was it the King Kong movie where at the end they showed all the symbols? I made out I knew exactly what they were. Fucking clue. I hadn't a clue. I was like, I'm sure that's some significance. I'm sure Mothra, it's got wings, it must be. I was like, yes, of course I know this.
Was that the Skull Island one?
I think so. Is it like right at the end where they're like showing like it's just like stone sketchings of like,
I think they like went to like they ended up in a military room, didn't they? And they're like, oh, it's Project something.
Monarch, yeah. Monarch took on, and then they that's when they alluded to the Godzilla versus Kong. But then I think it was like 4 years later they came out with Godzilla versus Kong, which made me so bloody angry.
Did you like it?
I'll tell you what I did like. I liked that they finally just went and did Mechagodzilla, who's the robot version, because like he's a legit character from the old movies. And I was happy that they just went there and did it. I don't know if it needed to be in the one with Kong also, because that's kind of a lot to cram in. But that's very much in the spirit, I guess, of the old Toho movies.
Who are you rooting for?
Godzilla every time.
For me, I couldn't. That's why I didn't like it. Like, I know that they
side.
No, because I know they had they released Godzilla versus Kong in the 60s. I want to say they did a version then. And
that's probably the first real Godzilla movie I saw, like a Japanese one.
Yeah, and so it was like, I know it had been done before, but I was like, oh, they won't do that because these two guys are supposed to be. I don't like using anti-hero because they're not people, but you know, in the sense of that you love them and then you can hate them and then you like them and then you don't like them, and it's like, don't do that, you bad person. And they're like, oh, but he's so nice. Yeah,
like they've got the freedom to be like, it's an animal, he just wants to go home, so of course he's going to smash up the city. Like it's fine.
For me, it was all the side story of there being inside
hollow Earth.
And oh Christ, we don't need Alexander Skarsgård to tell us that. It's like,
he wasn't even a decent bit of eye candy. Like, I think that man's beautiful, and then I was like, I don't really care about you. Like, just no. Not interested. I couldn't decide who I was rooting for, to be honest, because one minute I was all about like, yeah, beat the shit out of him, Kong, and the next minute I'm like, you go Godzilla. And honestly, I was just backwards and forwards. I was on team nobody. I really
I've got a really cool tidbit about the old Godzilla versus Kong.
Oh.
So that was basically what they came back with after the first two movies. Then a 7-year gap while they did like Rodan, Mothra, Anguirus, and all the gang.
All the cool kids.
So that was actually the first time we got to saw Godzilla and Kong in color. Like everything else had been black and white up to that point. They obviously sized up Kong, so he was just the size of Godzilla. They didn't really explain how or why or where he came from, I don't think. But fun fact, it was originally supposed to be a Frankenstein monster fighting Godzilla in that movie.
What?
And that's why there's a part where Kong gets struck by lightning and it makes him like stronger, because they obviously kept in all the story. So
wow,
it was supposed to be this. By the way, this was the creator of King Kong who came up with this idea. He was like, I want it to be Godzilla versus like a monster that Dr. Frankenstein has created, like that. So it was going to be like created out of animal parts to be like a monster.
It worked for Universal. Why would it not work for them?
But apparently in Germany, a lot of the Godzilla movies are like recontextualized, as in these are like all of Frankenstein's monsters that are fighting each other and stuff like that.
It sounds more like a Cronenberg movie than it does anything else. It's like
he was going to make a chimera, apparently.
Let's just get loads of animal parts and hope for the best. It's like that episode of Rick and Morty where they go to Cronenberg land or planet or whatever it is. And they're all.
But back in the day, I think Godzilla wins. And then there was like rumors that there was like an American cut where King Kong wins, but that was just a lie because it was pre-internet times and you could make stuff up.
and it became true.
No, Godzilla always wins.
I generally can't remember who won in the most recent one.
I think they just shook hands. And
okay.
But Kong got beat down and then he decided to join forces, that old chestnut.
As they do.
I did really like King of the Monsters, like the middle Godzilla movie without Kong. I thought that was faithful. It had like Rodan and stuff and like Mothra and everything. King Ghidorah, who's the three-headed dragon guy, who's one of my favorite designs. Like it did everything well.
Yeah, I mean, that's if you're going to do something in CGI, I think they pulled off they took the original costume versions and they made them into something that you actually could imagine when you were a kid watching these Godzillas. You were like, if that was real, what would that look like? And then you'd think about, and they got it pretty close to how my head always thought these things would look. But the sheer scale when Ghidorah came out.
Yeah, when it flies over the town. Like, I think that's the thing that you get more in the new films is like what it looks like on the ground level, because obviously they can CGI all the buildings explode and it doesn't have to be models anymore. So you can have actual people on set like kind of reacting.
Well, speaking of the design, he was actually meant to be a giant octopus.
Wow.
Yeah, he was.
Could you just imagine? Like, how does he stand up?
You know what? I don't even think he's even fought an octopus. So, what did they do with the octopus tech they were developing, like at Toho Studios?
Even like the costume, like they must have thought of themselves, how the frig are we gonna be able to maneuver this creature to fight off whoever? Like it can't even stand up.
Unless they're just gonna get a real octopus and let it loose on a model set.
God, a hentai version of Godzilla.
Oh
God,
Sammy, you've lowered the tone.
And it was
thanks, Graham. Graham taught me well.
Oh God, I just got this image in my head of an Ed Wood when they chuck the big giant octopus off one of the actors in this swamp. I've just got this image of that's how they were going to do it. Come on, people, chuck some more factoid as because that was the last one.
I've got a great one. Like, I was talking about that weird time travel movie, which I can't remember what it was called. I think it was like the Revenge of King Ghidorah. They've all got giant silly titles. But so in this time travel story, the time travel and aliens gets seen by some American military people, and he's like, that looked like an alien, like, should we report it? And he's like, what? And tell everyone we saw little green men running around? I don't think so, but you can tell the story to your son. Yeah, Corporal Spielberg. So in the Godzilla lore, Steven Spielberg's dad told him about an alien he saw that was transporting Godzilla out of the timeline, and that's how he came up with the idea for ET. Boom.
Oh my god, how amazing if that would be true.
I mean, it's definitely just something the dub people were like, this would be really silly if we're like...
Just to slightly go on a side note there, I recently heard that Javier Bardem had a crush on ET when he was a kid.
How?
I cannot fathom this one, but it was an interview he did with Vogue, and he went to see it 3 times in the same day, and he said that ET was his first crush when he was growing up. I was like,
well, he doesn't he dress up in like a
lady's outfit.
Well, girl's hat and dress. So
it's not the same as Bugs Bunny.
No.
When he did it.
No. Bloody hell, 3 times in one day, once in a lifetime is enough for that movie. I couldn't imagine doing it 3 times in one day.
Could be class ET as a monster. The start's pretty scary.
I ain't doing an episode on ET.
Got it.
It would be incredibly short.
Noted.
Did you know in the works there was going to be, for all the the versus movies they did? Now I don't know how this was going to work, because I cannot fathom the scale of how they would have done this. It was going to be Godzilla versus Batman.
Jake. It's
How?
like the 2 worlds combining.
Yeah, with prep time, could Batman be Godzilla?
I mean, are you gonna have a moment every time in this podcast where you blow my mind with shit? Because you did it last week. You're doing it right now.
I got more.
But I guess he's got an aircraft, doesn't he? He wouldn't be that bad. It's not a fist fight.
It just go, get out my way. And Godzilla would just
do that in like a movie, or
it was supposed to be in the works. They saw the success of Michael Keaton's first one with Tim Burton.
Wow.
And they were like,
then.
Yeah, and they were like, we could do something with this. But then apparently it was something along the lines that it didn't get out of development because DC wouldn't release it was either DC wouldn't release Batman for the crossover, or the studio for Godzilla couldn't afford to use Batman to license for the movie. It was something like that. It was one or the other.
Well, Bob Kane was still alive then, so he would probably have something to say about it.
He's like, God, what?
Fuck no.
That would have been that's a cool alternate timeline kind of thing. If you could go to that timeline where that movie got created.
But he did feature it with the Avengers, and this was the weird thing. They did in the 70s, late 70s, Marvel ran a 24-issue comic with Godzilla, and he fought the Avengers and the Fantastic Four in this comic book series.
I read this.
Yeah.
I actually read this somewhere today. That did actually blow my mind, because then all I kept thinking of is a character in Marvel, Devil Dinosaur, and I was like, oh my god, why didn't they just go like Devil Dinosaur and Godzilla? That would have made more fucking sense than the Avengers and Fantastic Four. There's
like a handful of like kaiju Marvel guys, right? Isn't there like the Shang-Chi? There's like a big dragon thing.
Yeah, Shang-Chi, Iron Fist, and some more.
Yeah, there's a handful of things you could kind of get there. That's fun though. I kind of want to see Captain America like looking at Godzilla. I want to see what he has to say. It'd
be that, wouldn't it? It'd be just like tiny man, huge thing, and then he'd hit him with his he'd throw his shield at him, and then it'd bounce back off, and he'd catch it, and he'd be like, oh. End of movie when he steps on him.
Or they do Ant-Man they do an Ant-Man and size him up to Godzilla size.
Giant man, that would
he wouldn't pass
so
out
cool.
if he got that big. Can't remember.
I did read that today, and I was like, that cannot be true.
That's a lot of comics as well. What'd you say, like a 24-issue run? That's like
apparently
That's a big
all-
storyline.
Yeah, you only get like 5 or 6 nowadays. Like that's a lot.
Because I've read some Godzilla comics, probably from around like the 2010s. But that always like that one I was reading, it had like really nice artwork, but it was like centered around like a team, like a team of like ex-army guys out to stop Godzilla. Like he destroyed some of their family, and it was like a weird revenge story about like a group of like, super military people.
Has Godzilla ever had an inner monologue?
He's talked a handful of times.
Has he really?
Yeah. There was like a thing where he got overdubbed for like one of the movies, and it was like, "Hey, Anguirus, come help me," like type of thing.
I think he talked in some of the adverts, because he did an advert for Dr. Pepper. Him and there was another massive company like that. It wasn't Nike, but it was something along those lines, or Nike, or however we're saying it. But it was something like that, and I think it was Gadzuki that was the one that was doing a bit of talking, and it had a really high-pitched young boy's voice. And it was very unsettling. It was because
yes, you're right.
costume,
actually, his son has talked before.
Yeah,
it's either called Manila or Minya or something.
Right.
It's not Godzuki. That's from the Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
Yeah, but that's how
there was a cartoon with a son.
Yeah, that's how I know him. The little one. Because I never watched any of the movies with it in, and then when I was doing the research and it flashed up, I was like, "Oh, that's Gadzuki." Didn't even question it. It's like, yeah, that's who that is.
That's not a real character as far as Toho's concerned.
Boo!
They had to make like a Scooby-Doo version of Godzilla that would hang around with the humans, basically.
Hey, that got me through my early years.
Pretty much.
Oh god.
They did actually make a cartoon sequel to the 1998 film, which was one of the eggs had grown up, and it was like a team of humans who could like call Godzilla to help with like other monsters and stuff. It was actually not bad. Like they definitely made the best of a bad situation on that one.
Did you know? Did you know that Godzilla is
did you know?
I'm trying not to laugh. It's so bloody ridiculous. I'm trying not to laugh. Patrick Stewart presented an MTV Movie Lifetime Achievement Award to Godzilla in 1996.
I mean, Godzilla's very Shakespearean, so I can imagine him being absolutely fine with that.
At 96 though, so this predated the Broderick movie. So
Yeah.
I mean, what? I mean, what?
Is it like them this is your life moments? Godzilla, this is your life. That is absolutely crazy. Like I don't even,
I'm gonna have to look up a clip of that.
Yeah, it is there somewhere, but it's like it's when he was full on TNG.
Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't think it was like a Gorn or whatever, like that lizard guy from Star Trek, and he didn't try and throw like a double axe handle at it or something.
Yeah. Oh god. What was I gonna say? More Godzilla.
Godzilla, Godzuki.
Godzuki.
Godzilla has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Yes, I knew that.
And he was given it when he was 50, when he had his 50th birthday. He was given it in 2004.
They cost a lot of money. Like, there's a reason why you have to wait. Like, everyone was like, well, Carrie Fisher should have had it like well before May the 4th. And it's like, that costs so much money.
It's the estate of the family as well that has to pay to keep it there. You pay, basically, they say, okay, would you like one? And they go, okay, you have to pay X amount for this. You have to maintain it, buy it, and pay for the rental on the spot. And if you don't keep it up, gone. Crazy.
So they just cover the name up and put a different one down.
Scratch it out.
King Kong.
They just
you didn't keep up your
down
payments.
to the end. Yeah.
King Kong.
Or it ends up like Trump's. Everybody comes along and gives it a bash, and then no one can see what it says. But yeah, I found that bizarre.
I find that interesting.
It absolutely is like a cultural icon. It's one of those things where like just everybody knows it, and they don't know how or where they know it from. It's just always been there type of thing.
Another useless fact. number
Go.
752. Godzilla is actually classed as a black belt in judo.
I can believe it. He's done a
Yeah.
lot of fights.
The early
But
movies.
how is he fighting? Like, I know that backdrop behind you is fucking hilarious, but is he really impacting anyone with that kind of movement?
That's him flying across on his tail, about to drop kick somebody, about to drop kick Megalon, who's a bug from underneath, from the underground civilization.
But how is he doing karate moves? Like, how is that actually possible?
He's a black belt, so you know.
I mean, but you wouldn't not give him a black belt, would you, if you walked up to your dojo?
Take it. Take it.
Take all the black
You
belts.
could. He's almost tread like he's like an actual superstar, like an actual person, like a very high-end celebrity. Like a lot of, he has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Like, how does that, like, it's crazy how he has so much celebrity pull, really.
I think like Japan likes to do that to characters. They like to elevate the character as much as like who plays them and stuff like that. And I find that really like interesting and like very like, it's very cute really when you think about it. It probably helps though, because it'll help the kids be like, yeah, that's Godzilla, he's real. He's out there somewhere. Like the world's very small when you're a kid, so like how could you know?
Yeah, that's true.
He also broke a Guinness World Record. Godzilla. Well, loosely Godzilla. I'll use that term loosely because what happened was in 2014 they were trying to work out the new Raw. And in doing so, they thought they found it. So they then asked, this is according to the fact I found, it's maybe not true, but I didn't have time to triple check this. But they said they borrowed the Rolling Stones tour speakers set up and they played the Raw through the tour speakers. And apparently it went from the stage where they were doing it 3 miles across to the Universal Studios lot, who then rang the guys that were on the stage and said, what the bloody hell was that? It scared the life out of us. And Godzilla. So in turn, it became the loudest noise in 2014 ever recorded at that point. It's been beaten now, but like it was apparently the loudest noise at that point. So it got a Guinness World Record for being the loudest noise. So he's broken a record. He's got his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and Patrick Stewart has given him an award. So
we should have that like on Godzilla's birthday. They should ring out that noise out of every like speaker. Like screw the emergency alert on your phone. It should be like it's Godzilla Day.
They should swap the emergency alert for Godzilla's scream. I would literally run anywhere if that was coming through my phone. Like I would run to any point just to get away from it.
But in saying that, actually, I've got another weird one. You know when they made the Jurassic Park Lost World, the second one, Vince Vaughn jobby?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I love that film.
That one. There's a scene in which they do a homage to Godzilla in that, because there's a scene where you see they're in I think it's San Diego when they have the T-Rex goes loose.
Yeah.
And apparently there's a stereotypical bunch of Japanese tourists, because you know Hollywood likes to stereotype people, and they can be seen running off and shouting in Japanese. The translation is, I left Japan to get away from this shit. As they're running away, and they translated it. So
it's definitely in there.
Yeah.
Like that was probably like the closest like you would get to like a good Godzilla type scene at that time. Like the T-Rex loose in the city was absolutely like, that was up there. It was much more faithful than the 98 film, that's for sure.
I do love me some like I love things being in places they're not supposed to be, because it's like it really, that sort of thing works for me. Like, you know, when we're saying about like Frankenstein, he shouldn't be alive, so I like the fact that he's there, you know. And then you look at Godzilla, and like Godzilla's a sea monster. It doesn't really belong on the land, really. But I mean, I have to bring up this point. If he was real, how much money would it cost to repair every bit of damage that he ever created? I mean, you'd see him come in and think, oh, Now, we just spent 6 million billion pounds, trillion pounds rebuilding it since last time, and he's coming back. We're screwed. You'd be bankrupt every
He's
time
not
he came.
He's not even the only giant monster you've got to worry about as well.
I can't work out in my head how that works. I'm like,
I wouldn't even like to think of the numbers, but I know somebody did that for what was it? Superman, Henry Cavill's first Superman. They kind of like tallied up the cost and damage of what he did to that city, and I think they made a huge point of it in Justice League. No, it wasn't. It was the Avengers. It was Age of Ultron made a point of the whole Sokovia and getting them all off onto the ship because
like
they weren't going to damage. They weren't going to damage the city. And I was like, oh, okay, I see you.
I do like. I'm a sucker for that kind of like logistics based, like in world stuff. Like when the characters have to actually deal with like the
real life problems.
Yeah, the super consequences. Because like you're right, like if you like destroyed half of New York like with an alien attack and ensuing fighting, like what the hell would you do after?
We're just gonna hand Godzilla a sweeping brush and then go, anyway, off you go.
Crack on, pal. You're big enough. You're big enough.
I mean, that's the thing. I just find it bizarre that I mean, I know it's because I'm a grown up and I'm not sort of in that fantasy world as much as I would be if I was, I don't know, 10, 15.
Yeah.
You don't really you don't quantify grown-up things like paying bills and shit when you're that age, But I mean, as a grown-up, you sit back and you think, Christ, I wouldn't want to clean that up. Or, or like, Jesus, how would you even go about dealing with it?
I hate that that's where our brains go to now as adults. We're looking at the cleanup job and all the hard work that people have got to put in afterwards, and kids are like, fuck yeah, monsters. Like, I want that mentality back. I don't want to be looking at like buildings and thinking, oh.
And my other half my other half always says to me, it's just a film. Stop overanalyzing. And I'm like, well,
movie magic, as Sammy likes to say.
Yes, movie magic. Been saying that a lot recently. Been arguing with a lot of people online about Guardians, and that's come up quite a bit. Any more factoids about the big? Is he green or is he grey?
Depends.
Yeah, I mean, I'm colorblind, so I can't tell you.
Yeah, he's grey to you. Do you see grey?
He's grey here, but he's green behind Jake, but he's grey here. So
yeah,
my NECA figure, which is the only thing apart from my very cool Godzilla t-shirt I have, he's grey. But I didn't know. I wasn't too sure if he was grey or green. I've
got a question for both of you. Now, Sammy will probably kill me for saying this, so I'll sort of push it towards Jake more than Sammy. But, how do you think Godzilla's origin came about? Because there's the Hollywood version and then there's the Japanese version. Which one do you sort of side on how he was created? I say they've never definitely come out and said Godzilla's a guy or a woman.
No.
Being a lizard, he may be both.
He has
if he's a lizard.
They did say that in the 98 one, didn't they? That it was like he was sexually reproducing or whatever.
Oh, that's right.
But
can you just give me a brief description of the origin?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This is.
I'll let Jake do this.
Well, I was going to say this is probably the most important thing we haven't touched on is that when you like think about how close to the Hiroshima bomb the Godzilla movie actually was, because it was only about 10 years afterwards, I think. So he's very much a metaphor for nuclear destruction, literally. But it's kind of like the general thing is that he was like a mutated something from like a nuclear blast. Like I say, it was a Godzillasaurus, like a T-Rex in the Japanese timeline. It was like an iguana, I think, in the American one, or like some kind of lizard.
And he just mutated into this.
And then the more Hollywood version, which was we're talking like King of Monsters, Kong versus thing, is that he was a Titan that got awoken by the bombs. And it's like, part of me sort of sees where they're going with that logic. Because so many of the monsters have appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah, true.
they would have had to have come from somewhere. So I kind of get that, but then that makes the Hollow Earth theory plausible. And
then you're gonna have to start believing in the hollow flat Earth. Dan,
I can't
you
get.
have to
I
join the
can't.
subreddits.
I can't join the flat Earth argument, but I do like the idea of like a legend, like a like that, in being awoken, like he was always there. I do like that side of it.
It's pretty interesting, but I don't like how that then brings up the fact that there's like Kong like skeletons, because he's like not the first King Kong. Like I kind of like them being like one-off mutants. I think
originals, yeah. One-off originals.
Exceptions.
Sorry, it wasn't legend you used; it was Titan, and I do like that. But I also I'm not mad at the idea of it being a mutation, because that's actually more of a rational explanation. Like,
plus I'm a child of the 90s where everything was a mutant.
Yes.
Flushed a lizard down his toilet, and look what happened.
Yeah.
You created this. I'm going to justify myself for why I did Godzilla, because for all I am lack of knowledge, I generally find this character incredibly intriguing, incredibly interesting. I need to give him more time, but I love listening to people talk about him.
Yeah.
Like, I absolutely love it. And you'll find this through some of the episodes that, I'm not like the biggest of knowledge when it comes to it, but I am so fucking intrigued and interested to have conversations with people, to listen to people talk about their love of, big giant monsters.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be like by the end of this podcast run, you'll be like the monster expert. Well,
this is what I'm hoping for. I'm going
be like
for
Giles in like Buffy. You'll be like the Watcher who's like knows all about the monsters.
This is what I'm hoping for, is going for monster expert.
Yeah,
but this is the reason why I want to do this, because it may come across that I generally don't know anything, and you're right, I don't. But I just like listening to. I get really intrigued. Like Godzilla is one that like up there for us, where I'm like, I just want to know more.
There's so much you can dig into as well, because you can obviously go down the rabbit hole of like the Japanese ones, but then you've got like endless amounts of like comics and like games
it's quite an intimidating thing to jump into.
Absolutely, and like you couldn't get those things on VHS tape like back in the 90s and stuff. It was impossible to be a Godzilla fan, but like it was the kind of thing where for me, like as soon as there was like a drip of information, or like, Godzilla versus Kong's gonna be on TV at like 2:00 in the morning, I'm gonna have to tape it. Like it was like a proper like thing where you had to be like, I need to see this just because I've heard about it. But now you can luckily get everything, and it's amazing.
And
people
just
can dig in.
Consume it to your heart's content.
Or you can read Wikipedia pages about
that's what I did.
About Space Godzilla and Destroyer.
Oh my god, Godzilla's been in space?
No, his cells went into space and created an evil version. Godzilla who's got like big crystals coming out of his shoulders.
Oh,
I think I've seen that design before.
And you know how like in the new movies, they shoot the oxygen destroyer at him to like kill him. It's like a big bomb. That's how they killed him in the original ones. And he had like a big publicized like Superman death like in the 90s, I think. And that was like how they explained a new monster called Destroyer who'd like spawned from like the old Godzilla skeleton and the oxygen destroyer machine.
Jesus Christ.
And created like a friggin' demon, like a horned devil kind of looking Godzilla man. And it killed him.
Absolutely.
But he passed on his energy to his son, and he became the next one. But he had a proper like it made the news and stuff. Like when Superman died, they were like, "It's going to be the death of Godzilla." And then like Dan was saying, on his 50th birthday, they did the Final Wars movie where it was just like, oh, we're going to have every monster in, and that's the one where he kills American Godzilla at the Sydney Opera House.
Oh, God. Oh, God. I mean, if you look at like the box office stats, though, from the Hollywood versions, it just goes to show that Japan, whilst I know he's their baby, it set a grounding for the amount of money that he's brought in. I mean, the most successful Godzilla movie of the 4 that they've released in the through the Hollywood studios, the most the one that took the most is the 2014 version.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That took over 524 million gross to date. But the most successful one was Kong versus Godzilla, because it was a pandemic movie. It only took
Yes, it was.
Oh yeah,
And
we
it-
watched it on streaming. I remember.
Yeah,
now.
we did.
and it's only taken 60 million worldwide gross to this point, but it became the most successful movie of 2021.
It's because
Which
we had
one-
nothing else to watch.
Definitely.
So, I mean, of all the films of the four, we exclude the Broderick one, even though I like Jean Reno in that. I really do. I think he's great.
It's
in
got
that.
some moments. It's
Yeah,
like
it does have some
It's very
moments.
90s. Like it's a good time capsule movie.
It's the gum chewing, pretending he's American. That bit I think is brilliant. I love that bit.
But unfortunately, that was my gateway into Godzilla.
Well, can you imagine that? I mean, sorry,
one.
can you remember the marketing blitz that had? Like,
Yeah,
it was
huge.
everywhere. There was like he had all the fast food stuff, like the Godzilla
Meals.
cups and everything, like that you could get from like Pizza Hut or something.
Yes.
He had that Puff Daddy song.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Jamiroquai.
Yeah,
Jamiroquai
yeah.
did
Jamiroquai, yeah.
Deeper Underground, wasn't it?
What the hell was going on with that marketing budget?
They put most of it. They put everything into the marketing for it.
I guess so.
Didn't Tom Sizemore play like one of the military guys in the Broderick one as well?
Possibly.
And
Oh,
Also, inexplicably, they have like stand-in characters for Siskel and Ebert because they were like, "This is going to get a shit review, so we're going to put Siskel and Ebert characters in the movie, like they actually called Mayor Siskel and stuff like that." So like, it was a very weird vibe they had on set, and Matthew Broderick's not exactly a leading man material.
no.
why him? Like, what is the? Who's sitting in a studio going? I know Matthew Broderick will sell this film.
Hey, we need an Inspector Gadget.
We also need Hank
absolute wet
Azura.
wipe.
Yeah. And Hank
if you
Azura
wanna-
is the cameraman.
yeah. The Simpsons crossover.
The voice of the Simpsons. Mo is behind the camera at all times.
Where do you guys want to see Godzilla go as far as like new stuff? Like, what do you want to see?
I really would more. I would like to see more of the universe they've already set out, and just go and just work from there. I don't want to see anything. I wouldn't be bothered if we saw anything new, because then that means like there's something new for me to catch on to.
Oh yeah, I mean we're gonna get two like split kind of timelines, because there's obviously the Japanese Shin Godzilla, which kind of ended on a rough cliffhanger where he was sort of like they stopped him just as he was like, but then kind of figured he was breaking down into like smaller creatures as if he was about to like split into like loads of Godzillas at some point. So they've got like a cool sort of cliffhangery thing going there. And then ours was like, they have announced like the next Kong and Godzilla thing, I think. Like, I think there was a teaser trailer. Yeah.
Round two.
No, thank you.
I think from all that you can see in the teaser, it's like a different kind of ape monster is going to be.
You're still going to watch it. You know you are.
Yeah, I'll have to.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not sure. I think what I'd want to see is like it go a bit more like crazy, like the Japanese stuff ended up with. Like, I think I want to see like more monsters and more big battle royals type things.
Yeah, I want
it needs to just be like wrestling.
I want to see less story from actual humans and more fighting from actual monsters.
Yeah.
I don't want to see any more Vera Farmiga, and I don't want to see Millie Bobby Brown in anything else anymore. Thank you very much. It's and the guy, which is still weird in my brain, the guy that plays Millie Bobby Brown's dad in the Kong versus the both of them, the last two, was also the guy who played the movie star in the Peter Jackson King Kong.
Oh God, what's his name?
I've gone blank. I can't remember his name for love nor money, but he's the guy, and it's like a weird circle of I don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
but
it's like Captain America being the Human Torch, like that kind of weird
Yeah.
circular
and
casting.
Ryan Reynolds, Green Lantern, and
Yeah.
Michael B. Jordan, and
You
oh
know,
god,
now that you've said like King Kong, that might actually be a fun idea for a movie where there's like a film crew trying to go to find Godzilla. Like that would actually be a good concept.
like have you seen Troll Hunter? Do you know have you seen the dubbed Troll Hunter?
The found footage one,
Yeah, something like that would be really, really good. I mean, if we're looking at the way that they did, and I want to say it happened was it in the first, I'm excluding the Broderick one, but the middle one of the three, which I think is King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
Was that the one where Ken Watanabe went down into the underground city of Atlantis, where there was
like
the
found
nuclear
Merfolk.
Yeah, they found the Godzilla, like sleeping under.
And is that the Godzilla, the only Godzilla, or is that one of many Godzillas?
How many Godzillas? All the Godzillas. It was Martin Chandler who played our dad. Sorry, it was Bugginers as to who that guy was.
But yeah,
But he was like the wet blanket character in like the new Godzilla movies, where he's like, no, don't set off the giant signal machine that calls all the monsters. Whereas like the whole audience is like, no, turn that thing on.
Yeah.
we want all the monsters to come out.
We want to see it. Do it.
Yeah, I want to see monsters, and I want to see fighting, and I want to see less talking, and more, pew pew pew.
I mean,
More
I
fighting.
wouldn't be averse to him going back to having like Kong versus Ghidorah, Kong versus Mothra, going back to the old ones and Rodan, and just reinventing, not reinventing because that's a horrible thing to say, because the like I say, the Japanese movies set the precedent. They set a lot of people's love for it. But if they did a Hollywood version of one of those, I think it would be. I'd be more intrigued to see that. Also, I like the found footage idea. I think that would be really cool. But they would all die because they'd all get radioactive poisoning and because
there's that logic coming in again.
Yeah, see, being a grown-up ain't fun, is it?
No, they would have a fun adventure and they would all
and then
go
they'd
home.
all die. Yes.
Apart from a few of the guys who had ill intentions, they wouldn't make it back.
No, they'd grow another head, and then they'd Cronenberg it, going full circle. Yeah, I think I'd like something along either one of those lines, either going back and looking at the bigger monsters and not to go to space Godzilla, because
oh my god, let's go to space. If Jason can go, let's get Godzilla
the best
there.
monsters come from space, so that's where Gigan comes from, who's like a weird turkey looking dinosaur with like a buzz saw and 2 knife arms and laser eyes.
Yeah.
Get Gigan over here.
But I mean go on, sorry, Seth.
No, I was just going to say he's going to win anyway with them arms. Like, look at Godzilla's compared to like knife arms. Like, game over.
But honestly, like, I think they could take some good cues from Pacific Rim. I think because those were really fun movies.
That's
like
where I
they
was
had
going to
the
go
fun
next.
element. Yeah.
I was going to say something along the lines of if you can see how much Godzilla in itself has been copied or used, like you even look at like Reptar in the Rugrats, and if you look at when you start going through all the old movies, like people actually either using one of them, like in Ready Player One, the whole Mecha Godzilla final ending bit where he's fighting, and then they in the actual story by Ennis Klein, there's all different Godzillas he uses, but he chooses Mecha Godzilla out of all of the Godzillas to do the final fighting. And it's like it's got a little seed in it. It's been planted all the way through. When you start looking at a lot of the monster movies, you tend to notice how much Godzilla is literally influenced them, rather than it being someone like when they go to the monster size, we're talking full-on kaiju size thing. It's always a big monster comes in, bashes down the city. They are ridiculously huge. I mean, if you even look at Ghostbusters with the Stay Puft Man,
yeah,
it's technically the same thing. Or the Statue of Liberty when in number 2 where it walks through. It's like
Yeah.
they all have that weird, oversized, in the city, shouldn't be there kind of thing. I know their origins are completely different, but it is influenced so much of modern cinema.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely. Before we wrap this bad boy up, the last question is, why do you love Godzilla? Oh,
I
the
love him
silence.
because he's got laser breath, and that's pretty cool.
It's a good enough thing. I just find him incredibly intriguing. And just learning more and more about him is just, I love it.
He's very anime, like his history is very anime. It's very silly and fantastical.
Oh, I love that word, fantastical. Dan, why do you love Godzilla?
Because he reminds me of me. He's a bit grumpy, just wants to go to sleep. Leave him alone. He always has that expression of when he comes out of the water, he's like, what is this shit I've got to do now? Yeah. What am I having to clear up? Who started this?
Oh, there's a lobster attacking me.
Oh, okay. I'll drop kick it in the face, and then I'm going to go back to bed. See you later. You know, it's very much of that whole like. I can see a lot of myself in Godzilla.
And do you sometimes walk through the house and knock all of your ornaments over and that, like, no?
Yeah, I'm like a demented cat. I wipe everything off the side. I hate to say it, but I do identify Godzilla.
I love that answer.
If the monsters come, I'm sure we would all want to fight them off and be the hero like Godzilla.
No, I wouldn't. I'd run away. I'd be like, nah, you're all right. No.
I have actually had recurring nightmares of T-Rex attacks.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's Jurassic Park's fault.
I know that is very much, but you are right. Like, I'm now looking at the design behind you and then picturing a T-Rex and like, fuck me, they are very similar. I've never put 2 and 2 together before.
Yeah, like I say, don't let yourself have nightmares about the Broderick T-Rex.
Oh my god, I still can't get
abomination.
over what I saw, and it was because it was a very clear picture of the actual,
of like the bad CGI.
Yes, it was so clear, and I was like, fuck me, like I was genuinely excited to watch that movie.
Yeah,
because this was like my first dive into Godzilla, so I was like genuinely excited, and I wasn't disappointed at the time because I have no frame of reference of anything else other than that.
Yeah.
So
it was all we had.
Yeah.
Like, it was like I say, you couldn't watch any other way, but yeah.
I didn't mind the movie. I thought it was okay for what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But when, like you say, afterwards, when all the stories were coming out, how disgusted Japan was as a nation, they it was like front page news. What an abomination! Hollywood has killed, our beloved.
So they did it. They killed Zilla.
So,
that's one of his deaths. Yep.
And then when you started seeing all that coming out, you were like, okay, yeah, this is a lot bigger than Hollywood. It's disgusted a nation. So maybe there should be something that should be done about it.
It might have kickstarted the reboot though, like, in the 2000s. So maybe some good came out of it in the end.
Yeah, only took them 16 years to get there, but
they've got time. For them, they have time. Godzilla is timeless, and he has proven that by being around since 1954. And it's 2023, and we're still fucking talking about him. So he's
never going anywhere. He's like one of those things now, like Santa Claus.
He
I don't
is
want Godzilla
always
coming
there.
down my chimney.
I'm glad I don't have one after that comment. I don't want him either. Just imagine. You get woken up by his blue fire breath. Well, not woken up. You're never going to see that, are you?
You'll never wake up.
That's actually how I want to go.
There's worse ways. Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap this bad boy up because it's been so much fun. Thank you so much, you two, for joining in the Monster Squad.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Inaugural episode for me.
Oh, yes. Welcome, Jake. You will see more of his beautiful face as time goes on. But next week, we're getting all... I was going to say hairy. We really are, because we're going into the Wolfman.
Amazing.
Yes, next week's episode is the Wolfman. Nice. Going to have a very interesting conversation on the Wolfman and why he's called Wolfman and not werewolf.
Man.
So you'll have to. So you will have to tune in for next week's Monster Monday. Now, these episodes go out every Monday, and the Monday you'll be watching this, it is somebody's birthday.
Happy birthday, Dan.
Happy birthday, Dan! Yay! Everyone in the chat, sing along with us now.
Oh Christ!
I'm only joking.
I was hoping you were going to Godzilla scream there.
That would have been mint. Oh, no, I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't embarrass you by singing because it's terrible for me. But yes, we go out every Monday. So new monster every Monday. On a Friday, we have Graham and Captain Goodwill trekking across the universe. It's already been aired because, you know, this is the future. And please, if you haven't already, go and check out Goodwill's episode for Friday. He has a very, very special guest on there.
Yes.
Sundays, we are always live, 7:30 on YouTube. Again, as we're in the future, you already have seen this week's episode.
What a great episode, guys.
Yay! We can be found on our social media pages, which is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. And we also play video games on Twitch, where you will see the lovely Jake and Goodwill playing some video games.
Messing about, having a daft laugh in that.
Having a daft laugh.
You kids.
You kids in your games.
You 34-year-old children.
Yes. I can say that. I'm old enough now.
So thank you everyone for watching. Thanks for everyone who is in the chat. We love you all. And remember, stay nerdy, everyone. Bye. Bye, bye, bye.